Hi, this video is part of my video series about the game of Go. The topic of this video will be joseki. I will be going over what is a joseki, how should joseki be used and how not to use them in your games, and is learning joseki good for you? Should you spend a lot of time studying joseki? I'll also be assuming you have at least some knowledge about the basic concepts of the game, such as territory, influence, eyes, life and death. If not, I advise you to return to this video after learning more about the basic concepts of the game, or this video might be a bit difficult to understand. What is a joseki? Basically, a joseki is just a set pattern. It refers to a sequence of moves in an area of the board, usually the corner, but not always, which professional Go players have decided gives a locally equal result for both players. For example, Black takes the star point, the 4-4 point. White approaches Black's corner. Black defends his cornerstone. White slides into the corner. Black blocks White's path and makes a base, space for eyes, on the edge of the board in case of attack. White makes a base for his own stones, so that they cannot be attacked severely. Both sides have stable groups with a base and a little bit of territory. Black now has center. That means Black can play anywhere else on the board and doesn't have to respond to White's move locally. That makes sense because Black played first in this area. Both sides got about the same here and played the same number of stones. So the one who played first gets to keep center and is able to play wherever he wants on the board. This is one of the simplest joseki you will ever see. Many players have seen it played or played it themselves without ever realizing it's considered joseki. A joseki doesn't mean that both players get the same amount of territory or influence. Why was this sequence played that way? What if Black ignores White's first approach move? Can he? Sure he can. He could ignore and play elsewhere. But then he would have his stone, his cornerstone, sandwiched between White stones and attacked. He wouldn't be able to get the same amount of territory or influence White would in this area this way, because he would be too busy defending his attacked stone. However, this can also lead to joseki. How can this be? This would not be equal. Joseki is supposed to lead to an equal result locally. The truth of the matter is that the proper way of defining a joseki would be a sequence which gives a locally dynamically equal result. In here, White has more stones than Black, and Black's stone is weak. So Black is expected to get less locally, and it would be unreasonable for him to expect otherwise. Hopefully for him, when he ignored White's approach and played elsewhere, his move elsewhere would make up for his loss here. If that's not the case, Black made a mistake when he ignored White's approach. That means that when determining if a result is locally equal for both players, many considerations are taken into account, not only who got more in the sequence, but also how many stones each player played here, or who has sente after the sequence, and what can each player do with the stones he played later in the game. How are territory and influence balanced in the resulting position, along with many other considerations you will learn over time. I know this may be a bit complicated for a basic video, but this way I just intended to give you a taste of what joseki really is and encourage you to want to learn more about it and the game of Go in general. Is playing a joseki whenever possible a guarantee of getting a good position? Let's answer this through an example. Black takes the start point stone, stop the 4-4 point in the corner, and white invades. This is a common invasion joseki. White can live and take the corner away from black. One common sequence would go like this. Black blocks white's development in one direction. White develops in the other direction. Black presses white's stone down to the second line. White still wants to expand his base in the corner to defend his eyes and territory there. Black extends the wall he's building. White adds more strength to his group. It was still weak. Black extends again. White expands the corner as much as he can. Black blocks, threatening to capture the white stone at S16 by playing S17, and therefore threatening the corner. White defends his corner, and black defends his cutting points. Let's take a look at what each side gained and lost. Black gained a strong wall of stones. Very strong wall of stones. Let's mark it. Which you can use to build or attack later in the game. White has completely taken the corner away from black, gained about 10 points of territory there himself, and even got sente. It's still his turn, and he can play elsewhere anywhere he wants on the board. And yet, white has a serious problem here. All the stones he played in the corner are essentially out of the game. They have very little influence, if at all, on the rest of the game, being surrounded and shut off from the rest of the board like that. From black's point of view, he would be able to easily attack any white stones that are played in front of the wall in the A area marked with the letter A. And if white doesn't play near that area, black will easily make more than 10 points white gained in the corner with that wall. White played an invasion joseki, but got a bad result when considering the whole board and the game continuation, what could happen later. However, invasion josekis are inherently very difficult to play well, since they are played inside positions when the opponent has an advantage. So let's see how simple josekis, such as the one we saw earlier, can sometimes be mistakes. So let's take this board position as an example. What if white makes the same joseki as before? Let's see what happens if both black and white want this joseki. As before, white approaches, black defends. Black has other options, of course, but we're focusing on the results of what we've seen so far. White slides in the corner, black blocks, and white finishes the joseki we've seen before. But this move, the last move, R11, makes the R10, R11 pair of stones look very badly placed. That is, their placement is inefficient. Neither stone adds much value to the other. A wasted stone is a lot in Go, since each turn you can only place one stone. That's the most valuable resource you have in this game. So you want to make the most with every stone. It's not just what you're getting, but how many stones you're putting into it. So I doesn't really want to follow the joseki we've seen before. What can I do instead? You can either play elsewhere on the board. Here, it doesn't have to approach the corners. Maybe there's something else worth it, bigger or as big. He can approach the corner from the other side. That is, play here from the other side and play the same joseki or another one. You can play a totally different sequence in the corner, totally different joseki. There are plenty of josekis possible. Or he can change the placement of the stones in the joseki itself to better fit the stones already played in this area. For example, instead of this stone, R11, you can play here, building the right side. So we see that joseki is not a replacement for thinking, it's just a tool. It's a tool to help us understand what our possibilities are. As we've seen, playing a sequence just because it's joseki can lead to a bad position. Actually, it's even possible to play nothing but josekis in all four corners and have a horrible position afterwards, which would be lost against a decent player. Josekis are a tool, a very useful tool, no doubt, but they cannot replace a good understanding of the game, logical thinking, and planning. They just help a lot. They expand your knowledge of the game, and you can learn new possibilities from them. They help give you good ideas and options to build on. They also prevent you from falling into inferior positions, simply because you're playing someone who knows a lot more joseki than you. So they are, in a way, helping you play your own game, because you won't have to fall into bad positions often and just do what the other guy wants. So now we have a general idea of how joseki are helpful in general. And we've already seen how not to use them. That is, blindly follow them without thinking. If you turn off your brain, you will not be playing good Go. But how should they be used specifically? There are a few ways to use joseki effectively. One is, during a game, the more joseki we know, the more good options we know we have. We could then make a better choice as to the best plan of action. For example, in our original joseki example, when white approaches, black can decide on one of few options. Yeah. So one option we've seen is he can defend. Black can also defend high. The joseki is for this continuation too. Black could also pincer white and attack the white stone. Black could also pincer white from further away. Or he can pincer white from a higher position. Black could also kick the white stone. Or he can play something entirely different. There are plenty of options. If black knows what are the possible josekis these different moves lead to, he knows what to expect from each of them and can make a better decision as to the best choice. When trying to improve your play, there is another use for josekis. Knowing something is considered joseki means a lot. It means very strong players consider a sequence to lead to a dynamically equal result locally, at least for regular corner josekis. So if you go over a joseki, for example, the one we've seen, approach, defend, slide in, block, extend, and find yourself thinking, this looks better for white or black. For example, maybe you didn't know the meaning of sente. You just thought, hey, white seems to have a point more. Why is that? Or you may see this joseki. See white going into the corner. And let's just give an example sequence, which is joseki. Without going into too much detail, this isn't supposed to be a video that teaches you many josekis, as much as teaches you what they are and how to use them. Let's say you look at this position and say, how can this be equal for both sides? I think that white got all the corner territory, and black has hardly anything on the outside. Or you may be thinking, black has a lot of strength on the outside, and white lost the R14 stone. So why isn't it better for black? It is these positions that you do not really understand why they're equal that you can learn from. Because you already know very strong players think this could be equal in many situations. Therefore, you can try to go over the positions and learn or try to understand what considerations that you haven't thought about to make this a joseki. For example, if you're wondering, in this case, black is fine giving white territory in the corner because he has influence on the outside. He has cut off the R14 stone. Let's mark it. Sorry. He has cut off the R14 stone and he has sent it. White, on the other hand, is okay with having that stone cut off because it's not completely dead yet. So later in the game, white may be able to pull that stone out. Later, that stone can threaten to connect to the corner and destroy everything black is trying to build here. If black stops it, it can go and just jump out, prevent black from gaining anything in this area, or start a nasty fight, in which black's group is even attacked later. So both sides got something here. They have potential for later, potential to cause some trouble for the opponent later. They have potential to develop later. White has some territory, black has influence, sente. Each side got something in this area. Going over josekis like that, in which you do not initially understand why the position is a joseki, is a great way for you to improve your positional understanding in the game of Go. This leads to another question. Is it really helpful to learn joseki? Should you start studying many of them? Is it good for your game? That depends on two factors: on your level of play and on what is meant by learning joseki. Because you can just go over a joseki once in a while and you can be studying josekis day in, day out, into the night. There are many ways to learn. If you're still struggling with basic shapes for life and death, for example, it's probably not a good idea to invest time on studying josekis. It simply won't be effective. You won't understand most of the things you're seeing, and even in cases you do, they won't help you in your games because you'll be losing games, even when you play the correct josekis because of basic life and death errors. And these will happen every game. Studying josekis seriously is not very effective until your level of play is relatively high, near or at Dan level strength. Even then, you don't have to really study a lot of josekis. Not all the time. However, no matter what your level of play is, just looking at some josekis and trying to learn the meaning of the moves, or going over something you saw in a game, are a form of learning that is almost always beneficial. There is also a proverb: study joseki and get 2 stones weaker. It refers to what would happen if you just memorize many joseki variations without understanding the positions. That would just lead to you reaching worse positions than you could by just using your own logical reasoning. That form of study trains you not to think and is generally bad, not just in Go. My suggestion is that whenever you face a corner sequence you have trouble with in a game, or that you don't like the result you got, you go and learn a few of your options in that corner situation. For example, suppose you're black and white approach your corner one way or another. You responded the way you know how to respond and followed the joseki, but for some reason didn't like the overall board result, or found that you couldn't play anywhere near these stones later anything effective. So what you do is you go and search for other options in that particular position. There are many great programs or online joseki dictionaries that you can go over with. You can consult other players, stronger players, many willing to help. That way, it'll be easier to understand because you're looking at a corner situation that has occurred in your game. Because of that, it would be easier to relate to what you're seeing. The higher your level of play, the more it will become important to go into more serious study. One reason being, you will need to make sure you don't get destroyed in the corners by your opponents just because they know more joseki than you. If that happens, you just won't be able to play your game after that. You'll play the opponent's game. In lower levels of play, this isn't an issue because, 1. There are so many things that affect the game more than the corner sequences, and also the opponents don't know that many josekis at that level anyway, so that's another reason. A word of caution for those of you who start searching for josekis and go using online joseki dictionaries for study. While these can be absolutely amazing tools, many of the variations they contain as josekis are simply known sequences, even if they lead to very one-sided results, bad for one of the players. In other words, sequences that aren't really considered joseki, or that can be considered josekis for special cases and positions. These will not always be labeled or explained in details in these tools. So don't just accept whatever you see with automated tools automatically. Search, analyze, ask other players, and use your brain, your logical reasoning. This is the end of this video. Hope this helped you understand the term joseki and the ways in which it can help or hurt your game. See you next time.